All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're very excited to give you all an overview of the second edition of our LevelBlue Threat Trends Report, Fool Me Once, How Cybercriminals Are Mastering the Art of Deception. This biannual Threat Trends Report is the result of a collaborative effort between the LevelBlue MDR Incident Response Team, our LevelBlue Labs Threat Intelligence Team, and our MDR SOC. And each of these teams was really essential in preparing the content that you're going to see throughout this presentation. Our goal here today is to provide you with relevant information from real-world incidents that we've observed and give you recommendations for protecting your environment. The second edition of our Threat Trends Report covers incidents seen in the first half of 2025 and includes a deep dive into fake CAPTCHA attacks like ClickFix. And we hope that by sharing our LevelBlue intelligence, we can help foster a stronger cybersecurity community. Our three speakers here today are Ken, who is one of our MDR threat hunters, James from our MDR SOC team, and Amer from our LevelBlue Labs threat intelligence team. So just a quick look at our agenda for today. We're going to start off with an overview of incidents our MDR SOC has observed so far in 2025. And then we're going to take some time to walk through ClickFix and fake CAPTCHA attacks. And then finally, Amer from our labs team will cover what malware trends we're seeing in 2025. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ken for our incident review.
Thanks, Marina. So I want to start by giving some context to what the MDR IR team does. This team is a subset of the high-level operators from both the SOC team and the front hunting team, and we work together to provide up to 10 hours of free IR assistance per incident for our customers. And this allows us to quickly bridge the gap in the time needed for customers to either activate their cyber insurance, spin up their internal IR teams, or to assign a scope of work with our consulting DFIR services. So with that out of the way, I'll start by saying that the first half of 2025 has been very busy for the SOC and our IR team. So I'll go over some of the key data points and highlights from the incidents worked by our teams, followed by our top recommendations to protect our organization, which are discussed in more detail in our report. So the Threat Trends Report contains a lot of metrics and numbers, and even as one of the authors, I think we sort of overdid it with what we're trying to show. So if I was to really distill the data regarding incidents as it pertains to me as an incident responder, and for you, the audience as stakeholders, it's the following. 17% of our customers experienced an incident in the first half of 2025, and the MDR team saw a 214% increase in the number of non-business email compromise incidents discovered from the second half of 2024. So this is an increase for this year. So these metrics show one undeniable fact, that there are more and more cyber threats, there's more attacks, more avenues of attacks, and threat actors are seeing more successes in their attempts. And this is really clearly showing the importance of having a mature security posture, a defense in-depth strategy, and leveraging the right products and services to protect your environment. And for our last metric, it's alarming, but shouldn't come as a surprise, as other vendors have also been reporting on this, is that threat actors are able to perform breakout, or the lateral movement off of an initial compromised host in under 1 hour. And this was simpler average. We saw instances of less than 15 minutes. So that's our thesis statement. There's more threat actor activity, and they're working faster. And unfortunately for organizations, threat actors are focusing on the human element and have been really successful at it. So now we'll go over parts of the MITRE framework through the highlights we observed in each step of the attack sequence. So we'll start off with initial access. This is where most of the incidents we observed were actually detected and stopped, with most of the vectors observed here being under social engineering. So in the end, deception is the name of the game. And to that point, there's also been a lot of discussion about the impact of AI within cyber. But the truth of the matter is we don't need to leverage AI to do these social engineering techniques. So within this umbrella of social engineering, we saw significant upticks in ClickFix, which is a campaign using fake CAPTCHA prompts to trick users into copying and pasting code and then executing it. These attacks will be discussed in deeper detail in the next section by James. Next, there's fake updates, which is the delivery of malicious scripts under the guise of browser updates. Compromised websites redirect users to a page saying that the web browser's not up to date and they have to download and execute the file inside. And lastly, fake help desk. This is where a threat actor reaches out to users through voice calls, through emails, chat messages, usually through Microsoft Teams, and pretends to be either help desk or even HR and has the user start a remote control session. And this was actually the back half of 2024's top intrusion vector. And we continue to see brute forcing against VPN and RDP portals alongside DMZ exploitation, specifically against servers running Crush FTP and VIA. And then lastly, we had quite a number of incidents involving SEO poisoning and malicious ads, serving up Trojanized versions of two tools specifically, RV Tools, which is used to manage VMware, and PuTTY. And these were targeting administrators within corporate environments. So once again, the deception used here is very convincing. They're using clone sites that are almost indistinguishable from the real web pages. And with an administrator workstation or, God forbid, a server being the initial compromised vector or host, the threat actor needs very little to gain full access and to perform their actions on objectives, whether that be exfiltration, ransomware, or both. And for the back half of 2025, I think we'll see mostly a lot of this fake PuTTY stuff, along with the usage of phishing emails with social security lures, delivering remote access Trojans, and also the recent SonicWall SSL VPN exploitation has been keeping us very busy. So we'll now work to the next phase of the attack sequence, which is the discovery phase. We actually didn't have any new findings here compared to the back half of 2024 for discovery commands within a network. In terms of hands-on keyboard activity, we're still seeing the same network, user, and domain discovery commands, which is usage of net.exe, nltest.exe, ping.exe, and whoami.exe still being used heavily. We actually didn't observe too much usage of port scanners like we did in 2024, but we still highly suggest that you block known port scanners and IP scanners within your network if your network teams don't use them explicitly. So once the threat actor is on the network and they can do some discovery, the next phase is to gain additional credentials and to escalate privileges. For incidents where the threat actor was able to get onto a host but weren't immediately administrator account, we see them run tools such as Certify and Inpacket to perform credential theft of privileged accounts, to then use those accounts to move laterally and to execute additional tools on sensitive systems. We saw multiple incidents involving the usage of Active Directory certificate service attacks, ADCS attacks against NTLM v1, and the usage of DNS and IPv6 attacks. And we'll continue to see the usage of dumping of the SAM and registry hives for credentials. So next, we move to lateral movement. This is kind of the easiest step of threat actors once they have privileged credential access. And they usually do this through remote desktop protocol, or RDP, with occasional usage of WMI or remote PowerShell to deploy and then execute malicious binaries, as well as RMM, or the remote management and monitoring tools across hosts that are reachable from that compromised host. So we usually see them start off on an app server and then jump onto a domain controller, a file server, or even an application server. So once they have moved onto a host where they want to either do some reconnaissance or gather files, we see them deploy some sort of persistence. We've seen from the last batch of attacks, either the opening up of RDP access onto the internet, either through Windows firewall rules or opening a SSH tunnel. But more often than not, they're leveraging an RMM such as Net Support RAD or Screen Connect, Splashtop. And really, to defend against this, you really want to use an EDR or Windows App Blocker to prevent the installation and usage of these tools if you don't explicitly use them. So you just whitelist the specific RMM that your organization. And lastly, for exfiltration, we only saw exfiltration a handful of times because we're stopping threat actors much earlier in the attack sequence. But when we did see exfiltration, this was done as a part of their SSH tunneling through OpenSSH or WinSCP. And we actually saw one incident where the threat actor leveraged a command line tool called S5CMD, and this is used to upload files onto S3. So the threat actor used this tool to beam up files to an S3 bucket that they named to blend into the normal business traffic of this victim. So exfiltration is a lot trickier for defenders to detect. So this is key to really stopping threat actors from exfiltrating files out of your environment to stop them from getting into your network in the first place. So we'll go into the critical recommendations that we've made for customers that have experienced incidents in the past. So there's quite a bit here, but for those of you who saw our webcast on the second half of 2024's Threat Trends Report, you might notice that these look familiar because that's essentially the same. These are still going to be the key recommendations we make for customers to make the biggest difference when it comes to preventing an incident or limiting the severity and impact of when a threat actor does get into a workstation or server. So once again, these are recommendations we have for your organizations to take and follow and to possible implement to protect against threats that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis and will continue to see for the foreseeable future. First one we have is to leverage MFA whenever, wherever possible, especially for VPN connections, RDP access, management consoles, and application access. Next is to keep any critical and internet-facing applications and systems patched with only the required ports and services open and enabled. And make sure you're subscribed to and receiving emails from your major vendors, as they'll usually notify customers of any vulnerabilities and the respective mitigations and patches. Next one's a really big one, which is the usage of micro and macro segmentation. So this is VLANs, firewall rules, etc., to isolate attackers onto only the DMZ device they've compromised or the end user workstation with no ability to escalate privileges or laterally move. Limit the usage of NTLM v1, secure ADCS, and consider host isolation in the VPN space. And then also leveraging networking and Windows firewall rules to limit protocols such as RDP, SMB, PXSect, SSH, SFTP, etc. To really think of, should someone be able to go from the VPN space to the domain controller via RDP? Or should they be able to go from a file server to the domain controller via RDP? Next is to deploy a EDR and NDR solution that can detect and prevent the usage of network scanning tools, lateral movement, just malicious activity in general. You can actually partner with LevelBlue for the acquisition, deployment, and management of solutions such as SentinelOne. But just speaking as a general cybersecurity practitioner, I would say just find vendors, partners, and providers that align with your organization's budget, security stack, and operational goals. Next is a pretty big one, especially with ClickFix and some of the phishing attachments we're seeing. This is where you're deploying a group policy object to GPO to force a default open with of Notepad or Notepad++ for common attack file formats such as JavaScript, WSF, HTA, and VBS files. And consider preventing the execution of PowerShell and Windows script host by non-privileged users. This will actually knock back a significant amount of incidents that we've seen. And with all this discussion on deception, really education is one of the most important recommendations that you can do here. This creates accountability for end users and makes them the first line of defense against the threat actors. You want to train and educate your users on the detection of fake IT help desk attacks via Teams, tell them about text messages, phone calls. You might want to implement sort of a verification process as a part of this education as well for the fake help desk attacks. You want to show your users the fake CAPTCHA attacks. James's part of the presentation has many pictures, and you can find these pictures on articles that and posts on LevelBlue's website. But really show them these attacks that are being done on sites that shouldn't really be asking you to run code. No legitimate service will ever ask you to run code on your machines like that. And lastly, with the Trojanized installers, you might need to deploy a couple of tools here that might be ad blockers to prevent the Bing ads and Google ads from being shown to users. You might want to provide links to legitimate sites for common tools that your administrators and users might need, or even teach users how to use scanners such as VirusTotal. You can also host the installers of key software on a share drive as well. So that's all I have for the recommendations. I'll now hand it over to James, who will discuss the social engineering.
Thank you, Kim. Good day, everyone. Today we'll be going over a growing social engineering threat known as ClickFix. This technique, along with fake CAPTCHA campaigns, exploit human behavior to trick users into compromising their own systems. Going over a little on the type of threat, ClickFix aligns with the MITRE ATT&CK framework under subtechnique T1204.004, which is user execution. In these type of attacks, threat actors depend on users manually running malicious code, bypassing many automated defenses in the process. These campaigns typically trick users into copying and pasting obfuscated JavaScript or PowerShell code directly into the browser console or terminal. The malicious code is clearly disguised as a CAPTCHA verification step, making it appear harmless. However, once it's potentially executed, the code can download malware, steal credentials, or establish persistence on the system. The campaign leverages both lure domains, which are fake websites crafted to look legitimate, as well as compromise legitimate sites. This is where malicious CAPTCHA scripts are injected into these trusted web pages. This threat was first detailed by Proofpoint in March of 2024 in their article titled "From Clipboard to Compromise: A PowerShell Self-Pwn." We'll now transition into an analysis that was conducted by our LevelBlue team, focusing on a real-world case involving the ClickFix technique. In this incident, a legitimate website had been compromised and was presenting users with a fake verification CAPTCHA. As shown in the screenshot, the CAPTCHA instructed users to follow a series of unusual steps. Specifically, users were prompted to press the Windows plus R shortcut, which will open the Run dialog box, and then they are automatically pasted into an obfuscated command that was automatically copied to their clipboard when they had initially followed the steps. During their analysis, we decoded the command and found that it was designed to execute a malicious PowerShell script. The script attempted to make an invoke web request call to an external domain. The use of invoke web requests in this context is particularly concerning as it can serve multiple malicious purposes. These include deploying a remote access Trojan, establishing a backdoor for persistence, delivering a Cobalt Strike beacon, or even initiating a ransomware loader. Fortunately, our team was able to safely analyze the threat by leveraging a sandbox environment. When we executed the obfuscated command in this controlled setting, we observed multiple files being downloaded from the previously identified external domain. The initial payload arrived as a compressed .zip file. Inside this malicious archive, we observed several files, which included multiple DLL files. This pointed towards a likely case of DLL sideloading, which is a common technique attackers use to bypass traditional security tools. However, two files stood out. One was the client32.exe and another was client32.ini. These immediately raised red flags as they're commonly associated with the NetSupport remote access Trojan. The .ini in particular, though, was critical. It's a configuration file that's generated during the installation of the NetSupport client agent. That analysis led to a key discovery. There was an externally configured IP address that was embedded within this INI file. Using open source intelligence, we were able to confirm that this IP was already linked to malicious activity and flagged as part of known NetSupport rat infrastructure. Moving to some additional information over ClickFix. The invoke web request command we decoded is just one of many scripting techniques used in the ClickFix campaign, particularly in conjunction with fake CAPTCHA attacks as a whole. Our LevelBlue team has identified multiple source processes being used to initiate these kind of attacks. The different processes include PowerShell, MSHTA, curl, and cmd.exe. Each variation often employs distinct obfuscation techniques designed to evade security detection systems. In one notable example, we uncovered a second layer of obfuscation within the already encoded command. This case involved the use of carrots embedded within a curl.exe command script. This simple obfuscation technique can allow an attacker to evade detections that would normally flag curl.exe within a suspicious process tree. In response to these kind of attacks, our team has proactively updated our detection rules and behavioral analytics to account for these evolving attacks, ensuring that continued visibility and protection against similar obfuscation methods can be protected. A key part to our expanding detection capabilities against ClickFix and other campaigns is the continued work of our LevelBlue Labs team. They've been instrumental in ingesting threat intelligence, analyzing behavioral statistics, and responding to incident data surfaced by our SOC and incident response operations. This intelligence is then integrated into our OTX LevelBlue pulses and a correlation rule logic. This is going to be able to strengthen both real-time alerts and long-term threat modeling. In the case of ClickFix, LevelBlue Labs identified a significant number of malicious domains hosted on Cloudflare, with smaller portions spread across Amazon, Namecheap, Vivacom, Art Telecom, and other autonomous systems. Additionally, many of these domains are registered across various countries and registrars, with a notable concentration, however, was linked to Namecheap and Web Commerce Communications. While NetSport Rat was the most common payload we encountered, we also observed variants involving LumaStealer and ASIC Rat, further highlighting the flexibility of these campaigns. The collaboration between our labs, SOC, and incident response team will continue to be the key to staying ahead of emerging threats and delivering the strongest possible protection. That concludes our section for the Threat Technique Spotlight. I'll now pass it over to my colleague, Amir.
Thank you very much, James. My name's Amir. As Marina introduced us, I am a principal on the LevelBlue Labs team. And I wanted to go over some of the malware trends. I know Ken touched on the IR stuff, and we did a spotlight on an initial access broker, but I wanted to highlight a couple of the follow-ons to such brokers. So let me go ahead and move on. So as we can see here, the top 5 most active malware, we can see a big jump in the Luma indicators. As operations for infrastructure takedown occurred, more samples and TTPs allowed LevelBlue to update tracker scripts to add additional coverage for Luma trackers. The most prevalent stealer outside of Luma, StealC, saw a small uptick in activity as well. And rounding out the top 5, we had 3 different rats: NetSupport Rat, Remcos Rat, and Async Rat. All right. Over the past 6 months, LevelBlue Labs has observed a significant spike in the use of NetSupport Rat, as highlighted by the ClickFix spotlight. This remote access Trojan tool provides attackers with complete control over a compromised system, giving them the ability to monitor the victim screen, manipulate keyboard and mouse inputs, transfer files, and execute arbitrary commands. NetSupport Rat is an RMM, and it's the weaponized form of the NetSupport Manager. It's a legitimate administrator utility, which makes it difficult to track legitimate usage versus malicious usage. Threat actors have leveraged NetSupport in their operations to gain remote access to systems, disrupt operations, exfil data, and deploy additional malware. It is commonly distributed via phishing emails, using deceptive tactics for tricking a victim into falsely updating their system. We observed multiple campaigns leveraging NetSupport Rat, including but not limited to SmartApe SG, SOC Golish, also known as fake updates, and ClickFix, also known as fake CAPTCHA. Threat actors maintain persistence through the common methods of scheduled tasks, registry keys, and anti-analysis checks. Moving on to the stealer, StealC. This one originated in early 23 as a malware as a service offering from a Russian-leaning developer. It was originally written in C, and it's believed to be inspired from Vidar, Raccoon, Redline, and Mars. StealC's main function is to target browser-related credentials, crypto wallets, as well as messengers and email clients. The stealer presents an option to implement rules for file grabbers to target specific file keywords for exfil, making it highly modular for its users. StealC leverages post requests to the C2 server's gate, which you get access through by paying a subscription fee, and you can access that through the C2 panel. While we continue to monitor the evolving landscape, we wanted to re-highlight the rise in threat activity, and as a result, a rise in indicators associated with the leading malware variants as tracked by LevelBlue Labs. As more samples are found and more intel is shared, a clearer picture emerges and can help provide a stronger comprehensive threat detection surface area. As a result, the ability to dynamically find and add indicators is leading to faster collection with higher accuracy and therefore higher fidelity detections. LevelBlue Labs is continuously tuning and updating our trackers, so stay tuned for future trend updates. I will go ahead and show one last chart here. We want to just reiterate the increase in activity from threat actors. As shown by this graph, you can clearly see a huge uptick as the year started here, 2,400 in Q1, 3,200 in Q2 of this year. And we saw at least a 2,000 IOC jump from last half of 24 to the first half of this year. So quite significant. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Marina for Q&A.
Awesome, thank you. So we are now going to transition over to our Q&A. So please feel free to drop any questions you have for our speakers in the chat. We'll give you a moment to do that now. If we can't get to all of your questions here today, please reach out to us through our Contact Us page on our LevelBlue site. All right, I'm monitoring the chat now. All right, our first question. So Ken, you mentioned that attack attempts are up and incident numbers are up, but why is that exactly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's quite a number of factors, but I think number one, right, our team is continuously improving both our detections within USMA, our custom alarming within S1. The lab team is ingesting more and more IOCs for enrichment within our platform, and thus our detections are improving and we're catching incidents earlier in the attack sequence. So that raises our numbers of what we see in turn. I think second is this current wave of social engineering techniques or deception techniques, like the ones we've gone over in this presentation, have just been working. They're effective and easy, and they target, the end user. So I think sooner or later, we're going to see more APTs leverage these techniques as well, and we'll have more serious incidents kind of start from the genesis of these attacks. And I think lastly, as to why there's more attacks, is just I think a good number of companies, not saying specifically our customers or just organizations all over the world, are coming up what I like to call the 3 A's, which is apathy, apprehension, and acquiescence. It's just a little bit of indifference with apathy of the controls that you have in place are sufficient to detect what's going to hit your organization. IT teams and management could be apprehensive about the rising cost of IT costs, as well as the complexity of implementing, hey, here's a MSSP, or hey, here's an EDR, here's a NAC solution. That can be difficult to implement within some orgs. And I think lastly, acquiescence is just accepting the status quo, right? Like that there's measures in place, but we're still going to get popped. And in the end, you don't want to be compromised. That gives threat actors an idea that, hey, we can get into this organization. That gives threat actors the ability to gather your email addresses, your password complexity rules, a lot of information that can then be disseminated to other groups and cause additional downstream compromises. I think that should answer the question of why we're seeing more. It's just better techniques and better detections on the defender's end to actually see these as, hey, there are a bunch of attacks going on.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks for that, Ken. James, looks like this is a question for you. What strategies exist to prevent or limit post activity during ClickFix style attacks?
Oh, yeah, great question. So Ken went over a few things within the critical recommendations, but just to kind of reiterate, for certain campaigns, you can limit the access to tools, such as what we went over, you can saw from the screenshot, the Windows Run dialog box. You can control like what can be launched from it itself, the use of group policy to block access to CMD, PowerShell, even regedit, and just enforce application control. I believe using AppLocker, Windows Defender, application control. These measures can be very crucial into ensuring that it's much harder for attackers to execute scripts, even if a user is unfortunately tricked into interacting with something malicious. This can inherently sometimes cause issues for certain users, but that's just a way of ensuring that users that don't need access to this can be blocked down. And
all right. This might be a question for all of you to kind of weigh in. So what is an effective way to embed the importance of end user training into our culture so it's approached as an ongoing resource for success rather than like a one-time corrective measure?
Ooh.
Does anyone want to take that one up? Yeah.
I think that's going to take a little
question.
more thinking on our end. Yeah, that's a pretty thorough question. I think there's people on two camps of it, right? Like some people want to impose costs on, hey, this action resulted in millions of dollars loss, right? And that could be a bad look for an organization to do that. But at the same time, there's only so much training you can do. And I think training costs can also be hefty at times. Those training applications and platforms can be relatively expensive. But I think just a matter of having good messaging on, hey, like everyone's doing their part, having positive reinforcement as a part of those like training platforms, and whenever users, report a phish, I think it's important to like build that positive culture of, hey, everyone's doing their part. I think that'd be my partial answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one. Is it true that 80% of hacks are due to end users simply opening the door unknowingly?
I'll also let Amir and James weigh in on this one, but I think from our metrics, when we looked at the numbers, 70% of the action, 70% of when we detected an incident on the initial intrusion side were social engineering. So I do think that percentage is going to be somewhere up in that amount. We do see intrusions that are no fault of any users, right? So this could be faulty. The Sonic Wall SSL VPN is a solid example. That is no fault of any user opening a hole. They might be running the latest version, Gen 7 of that software, but you can still get compromised. But I will say, just from our numbers and looking at the initial access, I would say yes, it is going to be some part of that is an end user gets compromised through a phishing email or through downloading a Trojanized piece of software, or picking up that call and giving out their password to a threat actor, remote access to a threat actor. James, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on this.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So 80% probably is close to accurate, I would say, probably even higher if anything. I would say most of the non-phishing related attacks, generally ODAs or exploits of vulnerabilities that are recent, are usually from nation states or targeted campaigns. So generally when we get these like hypothetically shiny hunters or scattered spider, you're going to get a lot of these types of phishing activity that hit a lot of different industries at the same time. And so I think that's why we see this 80% number seem high. It's just the level of impact of that 80% seems a lot lower relative to, let's say, an exploit of a vulnerability. So maybe the level of damage is different, but the amount of people hit is way higher.
Makes sense. All right, another question for you. Maybe Amir, you want to take this one. What do you think is the biggest risk that we're currently facing with cloud environments, and why do you think threat actors have been targeting cloud services more frequently lately?
It's actually a good tie-in because I just mentioned shiny hunters, which recently was breaching Salesforce accounts. So as more and more of our industry and other industries choose the same vendors for the same supply chains and the same purposes, it makes it way easier for threat actors to target those services to get the most amount of reward for their damage. So I think ever since the pandemic, we've moved towards a more cloud infrastructure, but we haven't really built out the security we need. And we put a lot of the onus on the vendors themselves. And it's leading to results like we saw recently with Scattered Spider and Shiny Hunters. And then specifically for hosting providers, there's only really a handful we can use. So even those are going to get very concentrated on what gets attacked down the road. So we have to think more of in the future when we start building out cloud infrastructure, we have to do the secure by design as shown by CISA, where we make the vendors themselves secure their devices before production.
Great, thank you. Monitoring the chat, please, again, feel free to drop any questions that you have coming in. It looks like we have answered everything as of right now. And I just want to remind everyone that we will be sharing out these slides with you so you can kind of peruse through, and you can also go back and listen to the recording. You can rewatch and listen to this recording that will be available to you as well. So I'll give it just a few more minutes for any last questions to pop in, and then we'll go ahead and close out here. Okay, thank you. One more question just popped up. So is there a particular OS that's hacked more often than others? What do you think are the top three? Does anyone want to take that one? Yeah, sorry.
I guess in general, it'd just be Windows boxes. I mean, it's a majority of what servers and user workstations, that's what's being run. So not to say there aren't, Linux malware and Mac malware, to that like, but most of what we work is going to be just Windows stuff, stuff we're seeing on Windows 11, 10, God forbid, Windows 7, and then your typical Windows Server versions that are out there. So we try, there's going to be limitations to what our agents can be installed on, right? So not to say you wouldn't see logs coming in from a Windows XP box still getting hit by like crypto wall and some of the stuff back in the day. But yeah, it's Windows. That's all you really have to say for that question.
All right. That looks like everything in the chat. So thank you everyone for attending today. Just again, please feel free to contact us through the contact page on the LevelBlue site, and we will be sharing out the recording and the slides with you all after as well. And please go download our report. A link will be sent out to you as well. You can read the entire second edition of the Threat Trends Report. All right.